Myself Siddharth Chauhan, welcome to Easy MedChem. Today's part of the video will be covering about the structure and functional anatomy of the spinal cord. In the previous section of the videos we had covered about the brain, the structure and functional anatomy. So today's topic will be covering about the spinal cord. The spinal cord is nothing but it is cylindrical in shape and it starts from the foramen of magnum, and in adults it will terminate at the level of lumbar second or the lumbar third. If this is a structure what I have already drawn here. If this structure is this is the rough diagram of the brain, and below the brain this is the spinal cord, isn't it? So this part of the brain is called the midbrain. This is the pons and this is the medulla oblongata. These all structures we had already covered in the previous section of the videos. So this structure is the brain stem, and above this is the cerebrum, and below the medulla oblongata the spinal cord is present. The foramen of magnum, this is the foramen of magnum. The foramen of magnum is giving the partition between the brain and the spinal cord. So if this is the foramen of magnum, below the foramen of magnum the spinal cord is present, and above the foramen of magnum the structures of brains are present, isn't it? So the spinal cord is nothing but it is cylindrical in shape, and it starts from the foramen of magnum and ends at the level of lumbar first or lumbar second in adults, whereas in the newborns it will terminate at the level of lumbar third, isn't it? So the spinal cord will terminate at the level of lumbar first or lumbar second in the adults, whereas in the newborns it will terminate at the level of lumbar third. We have to keep it in our mind that in the newborns it will terminate at the level of lumbar third. The spinal cord will occupy the 2/3 part of the vertebral column. The spinal cord is not covering the full part of the vertebral column. It will cover only the 2/3 part of the vertebral column. As in the brain, the spinal cord is also covered by the three layers or the three menings, which is the dura mater, arachnoid and the pia mater. The three meninges of the spinal cord are the pia mater, arachnoid and the dura mater, same as in the brain. The cerebrospinal fluid will flow in the subarachnoid space. It is a space between the two meninges. So the cerebrospinal fluid is flowing in the subarachnoid space. So the spinal cord is nothing but it is a cylindrical in shape, and it terminates at the level of lumbar first or lumbar second in the adults, whereas in the newborns it will terminate at the level of lumbar third, isn't it? If this is the section of the brain, spinal cord, this is the transverse section of the spinal cord. This section of the spinal cord will give us that in the posterior side of the spinal cord the posterior median sulcus is present, whereas in the anterior side the anterior median fissure is present. So we have to remember that in the anterior side the fissure is present, and in the posterior side the sulcus is present. In the spinal cord the gray matter is butterfly in shape. So this part of the spinal cord is the gray matter. Okay, this part of the spinal cord is the gray matter, which is H shape or butterfly in shape, and these parts are the white matters. Okay, these are the white matters and this is the gray matter. In the anterior side the anterior median fissure is present, and in the posterior side the posterior median sulcus is present. There are two enlargements in the spinal cord, which is the cervical enlargement and the lumbar enlargement. So the two types of enlargement in the section of the spinal cord are in the cervical region and in the lumbar region. The 31 pairs of the spinal cord attached to it by the anterior root and the posterior root. There are two types of horns are present in the gray matter of the spinal cord, which are the anterior or ventral horn and the posterior or the dorsal horn. In some areas the lateral horns are also present. So there are in general two types of horns are present in the gray matter of the spinal cord, which are the anterior horn, which is motor in function, and posterior horn, which is sensory in function. And in some areas the lateral horns are also present, isn't it? We know that the anterior horn is motor in function, whereas the posterior horn is sensory in function. So If this is the posterior horn and this is the anterior horn, the anterior horn is motor in function. So this section of the gray matter is motor in function. So this part with the terminal part of the anterior horn is somatic motor and this is the visceral motor. So this part is the somatic motor and this part is the visceral motor. If this part is the posterior horn or the dorsal horn, which is sensory in function, this part is the sensory somatic and this is the visceral somatic. That's all for this part of the video. We'll be covering the remaining section of this part in the next section of the video. So do like, share and subscribe my channel and press bell icon for more notification. And please guys do comments also. Thank you. Please like, share and subscribe Easy MedChem and press bell icon for more notification.